Hello and welcome to another Casual Friday brought to you by the FTX app, or maybe I should say assalamu alaikum to the Saudi brothers bidding up BTC. I'm watching the monthly time frame, Don. The candle is green. I know you're up turbo on a bunch of some reasonable, some totally degenerate positions. Is the worst behind us? Is that it? Was it really as simple as you buy 20k and walk away, and people just became macro systemic risk contagion bankruptcy lawyer experts all at the wrong time? What's going on? We need a Don update on this
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, the short version is basically how funny would it be if 20K was the bottom and no one bought it because they were like all just kind of speculating on macro going to zero? Very, very funny. What usually happens is that the funniest outcome is the most likely in crypto. So that's kind of my assumption for now. Like, I don't know. I'm still very, very positive. I don't really see a reason to kind of sell anything that I bought at an all-time high retest, basically. I mean, it's the best level on the chart. It's the best kind of price level in general. You don't even need a chart, right? If you hear, okay, what's like a good price to buy on something that's up turbo and just like in general, like it's retracing. I mean, prior all-time high is pretty much the most obvious place, I think, to bid. So yeah, that's like the TLDR version, I think, of it all. I'm still very positive.
Yeah, that makes sense. The market's looked better than it's looked in some time. It started shifting on lower time frames. You and I discussed, like, a lot of these bounces off resistance. They were getting shallower, like the reaction, whatever else. The market's moving decently now. We will dive into like the lower time frame stuff a little bit. I think it'd be helpful to maybe get the worst case scenario out the way, just
Hmm.
to discard with that, or at least bring it up first so you know kind of what's up. So obviously the bull case is something we've talked about on like a bunch of shows, this one, weekly open, etc. The bull case for this price area is basically that 20k is some version of very important support, right? And if 20k holds, because of how quickly and how low the market went, even a bearish retest or a mean reversion, the first kind of volume cluster or just level where it makes sense, where you have candle structure, is closer to 30k than anywhere else, right? The
Yeah.
previous range low is around 32k. The pre-breakdown tiny green candle we had is around 29k. We've had the discussions last week about all the confluent moving averages at around 30 plus, to be honest, is where most of them align. I mean, they can obviously catch up with price and come down a little bit, but all roads lead to 30k for some sort of mean reversion, and if the market stops going down only, right? So I think that we made that base case a bunch of times. It's not worth repeating over and over. So in terms of what I think like the worst case scenarios for this is, or what could completely stuff this rally, and feel free to add to this list. For me, there are two things. One is if we get memed by some 200-week moving average again, right? That would be
Hmm.
positively terrible. A lot of the time you get levels which should be really good support and they fail, and you're like, well, this level's nonsense and it's not very useful, it's maybe played out, and then it comes back to test as resistance. You don't care about it as much as you should because it wasn't good support, and then it just turns into amazing resistance, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this should have been support, it wasn't. Maybe the level's crap, whatever, it doesn't matter, and then you kind of forget about it from the underside, and then that's when it really does its job. The 200-week moving average is like pretty much where price is right now. I think it missed very narrowly, at least on BTC. I'm pretty sure it's on ETH. So that would be a kind of, you said the memeiest thing is most likely to come true. You can add that to your meme list, right? Of like, didn't do shit as support for weeks on the way down, but it was amazing resistance on the way up. And you basically get a completely shallow, dead version of a mean reversion, and that the market is so weak that the most you can do isn't a reversion to those 21, 50, 200 day, whatever, but it's just an underside kiss to the 200 weekly, and then that's where momentum runs out. That's the first thing. And the second one, I think, would be if or at least potentially, and we could talk about decoupling and decorrelation stuff, and I agree with you, it's probably going to kick in at some point, even if it's just for like a short window or something like
Yeah.
that. I think that's probably a good base case to have. But on that note, that's probably another one of those downside scenarios to consider, where even if crypto structurally and technically looks better than it's looked before, earnings seasons comes out, or there's more macro stuff, whatever you want to call it, the S&P nukes and crypto nukes with it, and all of its strength just gets dragged down by a much larger force. I think it's really those two scenarios where this mean reversion doesn't have legs. It's either that the market's so weak that you get a very short one, and instead of the medium-term trend proxies, like all the stuff at 30k doesn't get hit, and the best you get is an underside test. That would be really bad. And then the other more catalyst-driven stuff would be macro reasserting itself with shitty earnings or crappy whatever else, and taking crypto down with it. Do you want to add to that list, or if not, what do you think of those cases?
Yeah, I mean, those are, I think, the two most important ones, definitely. You could argue for like a decoupling in the sense that you even just decouple to the negative side. So Bitcoin goes down, like macro goes up. I think in general, just given how far the market is down, that's pretty unlikely, but it's not something that you should necessarily like lose focus on. Like decoupling stuff can go both ways, right? And we've seen that on the way down. You don't have to have like positive decoupling. You can have like pretty shitty ones as well. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all there is. I think that's actually for the first time in a long time, it's actually pretty simple, right? You have amazing support on Bitcoin and ETH, and you have like a shitty macro situation, but you have not much else, right? So you have to pick your poison. Do you believe in like the strongest levels that you have on in crypto, or do you believe in okay, we're kind of in a shitty situation worldwide, and we're all gonna lose money and not be able to buy food or whatever? I mean, everything's pretty shitty out there for like a lot of people. So like that's kind of like the you have to pick your poison. You can't do both. You can't be like saying, okay, I'm bearish because of macro, but I'm bullish because of 20k support, and then just I mean you can do that, but then you're not gonna like put in a position. For me, it kind of like in these kind of instances where it's like you have these two strong narratives that are kind of against each other, for me it doesn't really make much sense to just ignore what I'm really good at, and that's trading the chart, right? Like if I have like the best level on the chart that I wanted to trade for ages, might as well trade it, right? And if I'm wrong on the macro, I'm wrong on the macro. um, that's just going to be a lost trade, and you can kind of file that as away as okay, yeah, the yeah, it's just went shittily. My system doesn't account for this, and maybe you change it next time. But usually, for me, how it goes anyway is when I have like really good support levels, the narrative kind of changes around those support levels. So even if the narrative is shitty or if macro is shitty, um, the narrative slowly kind of changes at really good support levels. So like I could see the narrative be a completely different one in 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, where you could even see like you said the decoupling that we've been waiting for, just based on the fact that we're down so much, right? It's like crypto is down so much more than the traditional markets are, which opens up the door for a mean reversion that is much larger than the traditional market one that we've been seeing, which is pretty exciting, I think, because you don't necessarily have to bet on the bear market being over. You can just bet on mean reversion, and that's kind of what I'm doing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very fair. And maybe ironically, well, it's not ironically, it's actually quite funny. The title we used for Last Casual Friday was like the best entry signal ever, right? Where it's like last crypto support before industry catastrophe or something like that. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
and it's
always the best level to buy. Yeah.
always by definition. And the reason for that, and I know it sounds like we're taking it for granted, but the basic premise, maybe for the benefit of our audience, is the reason you do business at extremes is because the extreme is by definition a very high like probability area for reversal in the first place, presumably because it's an extreme, and B, it gives you the largest proximity. Or, sorry, not the largest, the best proximity to invalidation. So, like, your position is basically where you're wrong already. So, you're not going to be, so that skews the risk reward in your favor, but it also means you're not going to be, you get fast resolution to the trade as well, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the benefit of doing business at extremes. Like, if you're going to do business anywhere, do it at A, an area that matters, B, an area that will tell you that you're wrong quickly if you are wrong. And the rest sort of takes care of itself as long as your trade management and risk management are good to go.
Yeah.
As
Well
far as the
said.
TA stuff, I want to ask your opinion on the daily time frame. So we said the monthly is green so far. The weekly, for the first time, starting to look like reasonable. as far as candle closes go and just momentum
Hmm.
in general. It's the daily time frame where we've got a bit more structure to work with. At the moment, it kind of just it might be one of those things. You and I talked about this closer to the lows. I wasn't buying, you were. I mean, you already bought by then. I was just coping in Florida without access to any of my accounts. I was like, this looks like the type of thing that's going to be an obvious, in hindsight, higher low at 20k generational support type of thing, right?
Yes.
So looking at the daily time frame, we made that first impulse low in the middle of June on the 18th. That impulse candle went up a little bit and then started bleeding down. It was like, here we go, here's the leg that takes us to 14k or whatever else. That ended up being a higher low relative to that move over there. I'm just drawing a very short line between those two. And now at the moment, admittedly, it's right again on the top at the top of the range and kissing the 200 week from the underside. So I don't think this is the best place for fresh positioning necessarily. But like in terms of a market structure point of view, if it closes here or slightly higher through here or thereabouts, this starts to look like, a higher high after a higher low coming
Yeah.
off of a key high time frame support level. Like, does it need to be much more complicated than that? What do you think?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Like, I talked actually about the setup, like a trade setup on my last stream. I was like, I bought, I think it's gonna go up, but if you want to have like a proper trade setup, you
Is
can
it the
wait.
cluster? Is it closing through that cluster of
Yeah,
22nd of June?
closing through the like 20.6k level, which is basically like that. Like you had that big bounce, right? You
Yeah.
made like all these candles to the downside, and you had the first big bounce and the first retrace. Basically, I clustered that out, like that entire candle, basically. The first red candle after
Yeah, I've
we
got
had
it.
set the bottom.
Perfect. Yeah.
Um, and I think like the fact that we closed through it, because that's the best resistance, right? Like when you fail that, it looks really bearish. And that's like the best resistance that you can have for like a bearish retest before you go lower. But the fact that we haven't done that just opens up the possibility basically for a trade, which is like entering there um, at that cluster basically with a stop loss below the higher low area, betting on it being a higher low, and then just targeting 28k, which is the next resistance. And that's like a pretty aggressive trade to take. I don't like I don't like it too much. I think it's gonna play out, but I don't like it too much just based on the fact that I mean, I had pretty high conviction that the support was gonna hold, so I just entered at that support. So I got to enter lower. But yeah, I still think like that trade is probably gonna play out. So that's kind of like the low time frame stuff that I'm looking at. In general, I think it's as simple as you had like you made a low, you've rounded out another low near the first low as a higher low, and you're now making a higher high. And I think that's gonna go like at worst, I think we're gonna go sideways without breaking the low that we set like just a few days ago. That's kind of like my base scenario anyway. So I think like we either like push it sideways. I think that'd be the most bullish because the longer the space goes, as long as it doesn't take out the lows, obviously, um, the more people are kind of offside and the more pressure you can build in this thing before kind of like running it up. If we just squeeze, I'm going to be more than happy to take my profits at the first resistance. If we walk it up slowly, I'm not going to take profit at first resistance. So, like, that's kind of how I look at it right now, just based on just how it's moving. I'm going to change my plan based on price action, obviously. So, if I see strength, if I see weakness, if the entire setup makes sense to me to kind of take higher or not, I just don't know yet. But I think in the near term, just based on the structure, right, you would expect it to go up for a while. And you have like a really, really good invalidation, like you said, like me entering near 20K, right? If it goes to 20K again and just dips a little bit lower than that, and that's my Bitcoin average, my ETH and my Solana average is much, much better. Then I'm like, okay, I don't want to be in this trade anymore. And I get out, I don't really lose money. I'm pretty sure like even if it goes towards 19K, my ETH position, my Solana position is just going to carry me over. So I'm like, this trade is already like a winner just because the invalidation has been raised so much just by recent price action that it's really tough to turn this into a loser. And now it's for me, the challenge is like not taking profits too early because I like to do that in general. Like when you look at, um, I mean, I'm up like more than 20% on Solana, quite a bit more actually. It's pretty much 30%. and I'm up more than 20% on ETH. Like when you see that, you're like, okay, that's pretty nice. That's in the traditional market. You hope for that in like a couple of years. Now in crypto, you invest for a couple of days and that happens. It's pretty cool. But with these kind of setups, I try to hold on longer. And I'm still pretty sure that I'm going to be like, if this goes my way, I'm going to sell too early. And it's just how I work. So I could see myself sell 28 and it goes to 34. But then again, it's just how trading goes.
Yeah, that sounds right. And just maybe as a summary type of thing, if the market squeezes and you get a very one-sided type of toxic flow, you'll be more willing to cover early.
Yeah.
If it has a rounded base and further consolidation, chop, churn, etc., that base will, if it resolves in your favor, likely lead to a more sustained move up. So that will take you on the more conservative side of profit taking. And if it trades, pretty much loses the market structure we've discussed and closes below the cluster or does whatever else, and that higher high fails to materialize or it droops back towards or back below what should have been a higher low, that probably is a bail signal, or
Yes.
de-risk signal. Is that more or less accurate?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. How you feel like if we were off air, so to speak, and talking
Yeah.
anecdotally, how do you feel about this position? Is it like fucking send it, everyone's wrong, moon it big, or is it like
Yeah.
I'm feeling
I
pretty
think
good?
so. Yeah. I think like my gut feeling is that we're going to send it hard. I could see it double, honestly. Like I could see Bitcoin double. I think altcoins could do more than that. I think like just off the cuff gut feeling, I think if Bitcoin sends here, altcoins are going to not be as strong. They're probably going to like not be like Bitcoin's probably going to outperform on the way up. And then near the top of the Bitcoin move, you're going to see the altcoins actually come back up and outperform Bitcoin. That's where I would like to sell the altcoins anyway. Bitcoin, maybe not, but like the altcoins. And then go from there. So like my gut feeling is like, I mean, this is just a really, really strong position for like the most epic, reversal of the last few years. And I mean, I don't want to miss it. If I'm wrong, this is gonna turn really ugly really fast. But I mean, I don't see what could happen to take it lower, right?
I've got an
Besides,
answer for you. I finally get home and buy this thing.
I mean,
I get home on, I'm home this weekend pretty much after a
yeah.
long stint of traveling. Can have access to everything. If I use that new TWAP feature, maybe on FTX, or hit some market orders, or do whatever else, that's really the black swan catalyst you should be afraid of. Cred
Yeah,
takes a trade and it's long. Nuke it.
I mean, please let me know when you do.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
I
gonna
can.
send you my bribe sheet. It's like how much you need to pay me in subsidies, like some sort of governance, like some sort of DeFi protocol. How much I need in bribes every month or every week. Now let's do it every day. Every day for me, not too long. You have to pay me X amount, and as the market moves, there's like a convex relationship there. I'm sure we can figure something out.
I mean, that might be the best investment
It's
I'll
the
ever
best.
make.
Yeah, that's BTC, I think, in a nutshell. And nothing
Yeah.
too dissimilar on ETH, presumably, right? Same thing, kind of previous cycle level. It just tested the candle body as opposed to the candle wick. I really like the explanation. Same old concern, or I guess thing to watch with the 200 meme week moving average, although it's generally less persuasive on BTC than ETH in terms of structure. So that's one thing. As far as reversion goes, I mean, prior all-time high wick is like a bare minimum for this thing to even be visible, like 1400, 1500, right? And if it does a BTC-esque move in terms of where are the candles, so to speak, also that's just like a really good way to look at levels in general. Just go on a high time frame and ask yourself, where are the candles? Like the candle bodies in particular, and that's sort of, and where are they clustered together, and where are they clustered together before big moves in the market? You're gonna get your levels quite well that way on a passing note. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think the larger ETH mean reversion, it's around 2K, right? Like it's, but basically for BTC, it's where the range broke down and where the big level rolled over, which is 30K. For ETH, it's more or less around 2K. I've just got that cluster, that swing high that we had on the weekly
Yes.
time frame. It's that one around 2K. And if I want to add the moving average memes on top of that, depending on which one, I mean, this thing moved a bit quicker as well, but it's all 2K plus for mean reversion, which
Yeah,
is
if you want to
that'll
be
be a big
super,
deal. That's like a
yeah, I
3x from the
think.
bottom, you know, like that's pretty meaty.
Yeah, I mean, going from like basically 900. And I think there's like, if you're super, super aggressive, and it's probably not a good idea to be super, super aggressive in these kind of market conditions. But like the really like where I think this would be sorted down heavily, if it ever got somewhere, like the level that I would want to short. And it's like a different, like it's a very, very kind of important distinction to make, right? The level that you would take profit and the level that you would short. And the level that I would short would be 2.4K for ETH. That's where I would feel comfortable. Like that at that point, I'd be like, okay, this is way overextended. Anything beyond there, I wouldn't even think that's overextended. I like it's a bear market rally, right? If you look back in time, bear market rallies have doubled regularly. Just because this selling has been one-sided doesn't mean we can't have any of that. And I think for Bitcoin, like the level that I'd be comfortable shorting would actually be like in the like 36, 37, 38K range. Like that's how far price would have to go for me to be like chill with like taking a short. I'm not gonna take shorts, but like that's how I would like back in the day, 2018, when I was shorting the entire bear market. That's the exact kind of level that I would look at. Now we don't have to go there, obviously, but I think in general, shorting is much more dangerous than longing in general, or like buying, um, because I mean you're basically selling something that you don't have. So you kind of have to be more selective, right? And I feel like people have gotten too chill with that. Um, because at the end of the day, like if you're shorting an up move, right, the worst thing, and this is something that hits pretty much everyone, um, if you're shorting an up move, you short it and then you're wrong, and you try to short it again because you can now like short a much higher price, and you're wrong again, and you're like, fuck, I was wrong. I should have been buying. What do I do now? And then you start like looking at the chart and you start freaking out, and you can't really buy because price is much higher. Um, but you can't really sell either because I mean you've been losing money on the sell side of things, and then you just watch the entire move go by, and oftentimes people just actually start like rage buying at the top. In that instance, I've seen it plenty of times. I think like that kind of relationship is one that you should be trying to avoid. That's why I'm like, even if you think this is bearish, I really don't think this is any place to short, even not even close to it. Like if you're shorting, basically, because we're still at 20K. At the end of the day, like we're low 20Ks, right? That's the all-time high of 2017. That's basically where every sane person that doesn't like get um, dissuaded by basically the macro is gonna bid, right? Anyone that's been waiting to buy that isn't freaked out by the world going to zero is going to buy 20K. So if you're shorting that level, I think that's just like ill-advised, at least on the first few tests. If anything, if you want to short 20K, I think you do it as we've done with 6K in 2018. I think like if you want to break 20K, you would have to bounce on it the exact same way that we bounced on 6K, which just means basically if we go back down to 19K now from this level, bounce again a little bit, and then go back down to 19K, bounce a little bit. At that point, I mean, be my guest, short the level. I was probably going to break. Until that happens, I don't see the point. Like if you're shorting 21K, your target has to be 20K. And I mean, at that point, what the fuck are you doing? Because if you're longing 20K with a stop loss at 19K, your target can comfortably be 25, 26, 27, 28, if not higher. So it just makes kind of sense, even though like trend wise, it's all against you. And I mean, we've just had like a massive bear market, just like risk reward and just being sensible. I think it just makes much more sense to be on the bull side or neutral rather than be shorting here.
Yeah, it's a pick your spots type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with that, and that's what makes counter trend bounces so difficult. You can be right about how direction will ultimately resolve, but if your timing's wrong, especially in crypto, just say goodbye to your money, basically.
Yeah.
And leverage only exacerbates that effect. As far as other charts go, S&P looking decent at that monthly support. I think you had some really timely commentary about the weekly timeframes at that monthly level of support. That seems to be the two wicks are just completely stapled to that monthly level, and it's kind of right back up to where that whatever bearish retest took place last week. I think any
Hmm.
strength through here would be pretty solid, to be honest, because
Yeah,
it's been a stair step the whole way down, and if it closes this week any meaningful amount above, or even next week, if it manages to push through basically where it is now, and I'm just going to draw the underside of those very nearby weekly candles, and
hmm,
anything through there is a meaningful shift in behavior, because otherwise it's been a complete stair step down, right? On the weekly, it's like
yes.
breakdown, bearish retest, breakdown, bearish retest, breakdown, bearish retest. Like whenever you get those types of relationships in markets and they shift, that's almost always signal. Like, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 times out of 10, I'm pulling numbers out my ass, you'll get like a very clear, like the trend is being defined by something very clear, and that very clear thing breaks. Like maybe 1 or 2 times out of 10 it's just some giga trap and the trend is actually intact and you still get fucked. That's really rough. But at least on like a lower time frame, whatever, counter trend type of idea, when those fixed relationships that have been defining a trend break, that's one of the best sources of evidence for a counter trend move that you're going to get, and it's worth taking because it works out most of the time, as long as you don't marry it or hold on to it for too long. That actually
Hmm.
applies to my BTC analysis, which is that I don't know if you look at. I mean, this applies on all time frames, but like I think that the 3 day time frame shows it very clearly. Like since basically forever, every single higher time frame breakdown has had follow through, right?
Yeah.
Certainly, if you want to take it from like 36K, that consolidation, like every breakdown has just led to lower prices. Breakdown, move lower, consolidate. Breakdown, move lower, consolidate. Breakdown, move lower, consolidate. I'm looking at this 3 day chart right now. I mean, it's close to closing or whatever, but this is the first breakdown in a long time that didn't have that type of very one sided follow through. And it's
Yep.
no coincidence that that breakdown took place, or that shift, that apparent shift in behavior happened not in the middle of nowhere, like, in the mid 20s or whatever else, but happened at weekly support, right? So I
Hmm.
think there are definitely some cracks showing in a positive type of light. And it's worth taking those behavioral adjustments seriously. And I think it's applicable to BTC USD, and it's also applicable to the S&P with its stair-steppy price action, which, I mean, maybe we see a shift in behavior there. Anything to add on I mean, either just what I've said there or the equities front? I mean, you said it
Yeah.
played a part in your thesis, and I mean, it's acting as support, so that can't feel too terrible, right?
Yeah, it's actually hilarious. I have no idea. Like, I always meme on the TA on the S&P, right? But since retail's gotten so heftily into investing and all that kind of stuff, right? It's actually been getting really, really good. So, like, I mean, we've been following the weekly S&P chart the entire way down. We've been saying the exact same thing the entire way down, right? You like retest resistance, you fall to support, you bounce from support, retest resistance, all the way down, right? That's been, like you said, that's been the relationship. And it's actually hilarious how well TA, like my style of TA, or like, I mean, yours as well, has been working on this. Which is basically just like it walks down and it has the same behavior the entire way down. And then people are like wondering, okay, why did this change in behavior? And like you said, it's because of higher time frames, right? You zoom out one time frame higher and you look at the monthly and like, okay, this closed exactly at monthly support and it's bouncing now. So kind of when you have these situations, you can kind of see like there's a good reason why the prior kind of weekly candles um, like why that relationship was so clear because there was no monthly support to kind of bounce from, right? So you just had like this ping pong from weekly support to weekly resistance. And now you have like a monthly support where it's like, okay, that can actually shift the market structure on the lower frames, as in the weekly, to your advantage, right? So it's really nice for like just trading in general when you have like confluence between markets. And I mean, with the S&P, it's just been responding nicely to TA. So if you have like really good supporting evidence that you like, for example, my thesis on okay, 20K is the all-time high, makes sense to bounce. When you have like confluence with the S&P there, just makes it so much easier. And actually, we talked about like the S&P chart in private, if you remember, and I was like, I don't like to fade these kind of like breakdowns on the weekly time frame where the exact next week kind of engulfs the entire thing. That was like during last week, I think we talked about it. Because the thing is, right, like when you have these breakdowns, they usually they shouldn't show immediate strength right afterwards. And I think basically the only reason why we had that red candle last week on the S&P is basically because it was the only way to close monthly at support, as stupid as that sounds. So yeah, now we're kind of like back at that weekly resistance, and I think you don't really want to be fading that, just based on the fact that one, the breakdown just happened a couple of weeks ago, and we've been like in that area immediately afterwards, right? So like when you have a breakdown, you want to move away from the level that you broke down from. You don't want to just hang around the level, because that makes it more and more likely, with the more time you spend there, that it's actually a false breakdown. And if this is a false breakdown, like you said, you could have like a really nice move on the S&P. I still don't think it's the bottom. To be fair, on the S&P, I think there's a good chance that it goes lower. So that kind of plays into why I want to be selling Bitcoin as well at some point in like the high 20s to maybe lower 30s, just based on the fact that I think we could be making new lows on the S&P as well. So yeah, I'm definitely not like a hopeless kind of bull tard. I see both sides. I just think like the bullish side makes more sense for both for the S&P right now and the Bitcoin. And I've gotten a lot of comments from people that have been saying like, you're doing TA on Bitcoin, but it doesn't really matter because the S&P is running this thing. But I mean, I've been doing TA on both of them, and just kind of using them with each other rather than just looking at one or the other.
Yeah, and if anything, it's to your earlier point, like even if you have a correlation, there are some points in the market where crypto native money is going to make larger bets and make its kind of presence known on the chart, if you will.
Yeah.
That's not meant to sound conspiratorial or anything. It's just like like for example, if the market's in the middle of nowhere, there is a much higher likelihood that it's going to be a pure S&P BTC 500 generator and do nothing else and be one-to-one with the market, right?
Yeah.
Those probabilities are reduced if slash when crypto gets to very attractive or important crypto specific levels, because you'll have more crypto wealth doing business there. And if anything's going to stress the correlation, it's going to be that, right? So I think that's also worth bearing in mind. Kind of like the trend, like you don't just look for trend reversal in the middle of nowhere, like in a vacuum or like at arbitrary price points. You wait for it to reach an area where it's like, if the trend is going to slow down or reverse or do anything, there's a much higher likelihood it's going to be at 18 to 20k than it is at 22 to 24k, right? For example.
Yeah.
So it's always worth having that contextual framework in your mind. And it's also always worth, as you've said, considering the difference between a new trend and a mean reversion, right? I think for a lot of people, there's an understanding, and it's the base understanding is excuse me, the base understanding is correct. The crypto either only goes up or only goes down. I think that's fine. But like from a trading point of view or even midterm investing point of view, if you're buying, there needs to be some sort of understanding of what am I expecting in terms of trend? Is this going to be a new uptrend and that completely changes your targets and holding periods and type of stuff you buy? Or is this a mean reversion, which also, again, completely changes how long you hold it for, your position sizing, what you're buying, etc. And I think at the moment, most evidence we have, or at least until proven otherwise, points towards mean reversion more so than new trend. I think the reason for that is new trends and kind of market cycle restarts are much more a product of just price. It's kind of price and time. We're probably not terribly far off from a price point of view in general, but I think there's still some way to go from a time point of view, and those
Yeah.
two needs to come in line eventually. Do you want to do some news? I think that's plenty of market commentary there. TLDR, market structure looks decent. Market for the first time doesn't look like a total piece of shit. If we're going to get trapped, it's going to be at the 200-week moving average, and or if stocks come out with a bearish catalyst earnings, whatever macro thing takes over again. I think that's most of it, right?
Yeah, I want to like comment again on the time part that you said, because I think it's really, really important. That's basically the only reason why I think this is probably not the bottom, or if it's the bottom, it's gonna like come back eventually. It's the time aspect of it, because I think the bottom that we're gonna set on crypto could very well be at 20k or like 18 to 20k, like we've had. I just think it's gonna range for a long, long time. That's why I'm playing the mean reversion. Not necessarily because I'm expecting lower prices. I mean, it could happen. I don't know if it's gonna happen. It's more of like a time thing. For example, like let's say I buy Bitcoin at 20k, like I did, I'm selling at 30K, and then Bitcoin goes back to 20K, and then back to 30K, and then back to 20K again, right? Something like that, where it just kind of like ranges at the bottom. I don't want to be the guy that round trips it 3 times. That turned me crazy. So that's kind of like the reason why, even though I think price wise, like you said, I think we're probably really close. Worst case in my mind anyway, and this is like just completely something that's in my head. It's not objective, but the worst case in my mind is like going down towards like 14K. I don't think we'd go much lower than that. So if you're thinking about that, right? For you the long term bottom, worst case is 14K. If you're not buying 20K because you like think there's like a small chance or like a middle chance that like we're going to 14K, but you think it's not gonna go lower, then like the upside is what? Like if you're buying it for the long term bottom, the upside is more than 60K, right? Because I think most of us are expecting new all time highs eventually.
I mean, it's probably failed otherwise, right? Like
Yeah,
cycle to cycle, the base assumption has been as the tech improves, as adoption improves, as the asset class becomes more legitimate, that's manifested in, or at least the bare bottom benchmark for it is new USD all-time highs in these assets.
yeah. So it's like if you expect that, right? And the downside is like you're buying in 20K just to make sure that you have a position. That's basically what I did. And your target is 100K. And you think like the worst case or one of the worst cases before this thing goes to zero is like 10 to 14K. I mean, that seems like a really good bet, right? Because I mean, you're losing. Worst case, you're like temporarily down like 50%. And I mean, like I said, this is like it could obviously just go to zero. It's crypto after all.
Yes.
But like in my mind, like that's just like you have to kind of pick a line in the sand where you think, okay, this is not going to go low. Otherwise, you couldn't buy it, right? If you're like always working under the assumption that it's going to go to flat out zero, you're never going to buy it. It's just how
It's
it
like, what are you
works, right?
doing here, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
also
So it's like
crypto. Like, if you're, by definition, if you're trying to do business at the absolute apex extremes, your volatility appetite needs to be really fucking high. Like
yeah.
20, 30, 40, whatever, 50% underwater. Like, if that's the price you pay for a willingness to do business at the absolute extremes when everything breaks. And it's funny, like, you'll say, like, you may be down temporarily 30, 40, 50%, and some people will find that shocking. It's like, well, look, if you're in that camp and you find that shocking, there's a high likelihood that, you'd also buy 14K. What's to suggest that if you buy 14K, it doesn't also wick to 13, 12, 11, 10, etc., which is the exact same percentage loss, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of just got to be mentally open. And that's why I think using spot over leverage, if you're going to be doing like apex moves, is a better idea. But using the whole percentage thing is probably kind of distracting, or at the very least, you need to have a big stomach for it as the inherent price to pay for doing business at kind of apocalypse levels.
Yeah.
And that's
Well
the
said.
conversation I had with myself more than anything. So that's something to reflect on. I will ruin this rally, Don. Just you wait. Let me land. Let me land, bro.
Oh, spare me. Spare
It's
me.
over.
I'm looking at my portfolio. I'm like, fucking hell, it's actually green. I'm actually down.
Yeah.
Like, I'm down for this kind of move.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be down. Don't worry.
Yeah, and now it's gonna be down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm down for the move, and you're gonna make me down with my portfolio.
Exactly. Don't say I'm a bad friend ever again. Just ignore the other 100 reasons I give you. Just don't focus on this one. Let's run through some of these headlines.
Yes.
The one is some of these are a bit older, from the 6th of July. This is from our good friend Walter. Cryptocurrency exchange FTX has more than $2 billion to backstop crypto industry if needed. He means backstopping technical roundup, obviously, but that was implied. And then it says, this is the interesting part from Sam, the worst appears to be over for the liquidity crunch in the cryptocurrency industry. Is this a Sam sell me all the soul you want at $3 and fuck off type of bottom signal? If not, what type of signal do you think it is? Does it guarantee a bottom in terms of at least price, maybe if not time? I think I like to be conservative. My view is the following. I like to be conservative with these types of statements. I think perhaps a reasonable inference would be that the majority of the urgent selling, the really aggressive selling, as a result of the credit crunch, is probably over. I'm happy making that assertion. I'm far less comfortable inferring like macro generational bottom or price guarantees or V reversals or anything like that. I still think it's good because urgent selling, that type of crunch selling by definition, is the sloppiest and has the largest market impact. That doesn't mean we can't drift lower or chop or do whatever else. But I still think on the net basis, that's a pretty positive statement, even if it's not the Solana $3 call people might want it to be. How do you interpret this?
I totally agree with what you said. I think it's basically him saying, and I mean, this is me just like reading between the lines and having seen like a little bit of like what he's been putting out in the last few days. It's basically saying like the crypto native selling, like that is beyond the S&P dumping, is pretty much over. That's kind of like what I think is. I mean, that's been my view as well. So it's easy for me to kind of reinterpret it the way that I wanted to. But I think that's basically how it is, right? So like the urgent selling, the stuff like the people that had to sell, they're out now. If the S&P goes down, I think he doesn't really expect the price to have like if we get more bad news basically globally, no matter if it's just like crypto specific or not. I think he's probably not going to be expecting that the bottom is in. So I don't think it's like a flat out, okay, bottom's in, price is going to go up now. I don't think it's the Solana at 3 and then fuck off. It's more of a, okay, we've been kind of underperforming everything. Like prices have been going down for the S&P, prices have gone terribly down for crypto, and I think that's over. So that's basically how it is. So you kind of just you were back in the okay, it's basically one-to-one correlated, or we break the correlation to the upside this time around. Like that's kind of how I read it anyway. Um,
Or it's like
and I think
maybe we would have mean reverted earlier, but there was so much supply overhang that it was impossible because of all that urgent selling.
yeah,
And maybe now that that's been cleared, we can act more like a normal market as opposed to go down for 12 weeks in a row, right?
yeah, exactly. I think it's basically a return to normalcy more than anything else. That's actually a really good way to put it. I like it. Basically, just saying, okay, this like complete and utter madness is over. Unless something changes, something can change every. I mean, shit changes really fast in crypto. Who knows what else is out there? But it looks like Sam knows or doesn't know of anything lurking in the shadows, basically, which is really good to hear because I mean they probably have most of the information that's out there, right? They kind of have like an inside view, if anything. And if he's pretty chill about like the dangers lurking, because I still remember him like talking about like that there's like a bunch of shit in the background, basically at like higher price levels. And if he's saying now that he doesn't see that anymore, that is very very comfy, especially like um the guys at FTX are pretty good at like buying stuff and selling stuff, right? So
That's the
if they're
smartest
willing,
thing I've ever heard you say, Don. That's such a great statement. The guys at
no,
FTX are pretty good at buying stuff and selling stuff.
yeah, but I mean the thing is, like if they're choosing to put quite a bit of money on the line to backstop kind of the industry, I think they wouldn't necessarily do it in the middle of nowhere. They would do it somewhere where they're like confident that they're gonna get some benefit out of it. Is my guess anyway. So not only did Sam say, yeah, the worst is over on the kind of crunch side, he's also kind of put his money where his mouth is, I guess, by saying they're gonna backstop whatever comes up, which is really nice. I think it's like just a little bit more confidence. I wouldn't base my trade idea around it. I would have bought anyway, and I'm not gonna buy more just because I've seen it. But I think it's good, like to kind of ease the mind because it's basically an insider saying he doesn't see um, more bad things in the near future happening, and we've had plenty of that.
No shortage of that, and that's the next article I've got in front of me. It's hot off the press this morning. Crypto exchange blockchain.com faces 270 mil hit on loans to 3AC. It looks like from their statements that customers are going to be fine and they're operational, but Voyager said the same thing, so I don't know how useful that is. But yeah, this is just more skeletons making their way out of the closet, the bodies being dug up and floated to the surface of the whole 3AC fallout. This thing is just insane, right?
Yeah.
It's like people just lent the same firm, the mind boggles, hundreds of millions of dollars, varying levels of collateral, if any. There's a very good chance that even if there were collateral, the collateral that they offered, they pledged over and over again. And there's this whole game of opaqueness and being purely reputation based and whatever else. And the fallout has just been surreal. I think this is the CEO or something saying, Smith said 3AC had defrauded the crypto industry, and I mean, at this point, that's really hard to argue against, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing if you make a bet as a fund or whatever, and it just goes wrong, right, and you lose money. That's completely fine. But there seems to be emerging evidence of them materially and consistently misrepresenting their financial health in order to, and their ability to repay, and how they were using the money in order to just secure more credit. And
Yeah.
that was only ever going to go one way. But just more kind of unbelievable stories. And everyone, like every big firm, is affected, right? Like everyone lent to them, and DCG, I think, had to bail out Genesis a little bit or backstop them, and they're like a super credible, massive lending firm. It goes anywhere from institutional lenders to exchanges to treasury teams of DeFi projects that they invested in, to their friends and individual investors, to OTC and market making firms that were trading on their accounts. Like it's unbelievable just saying all of that out loud, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how they could dig this hole so deep. I gotta say, like, I would say, like, in general, the crypto space defrauded itself a little bit. I mean, just like doing these kind of loans without sufficient collateral and without kind of being able to just pull out of it is kind of crazy to me. But I guess that's just how crypto works. But yeah, that definitely, I mean, there's really no excuse for what they've done. I mean, at the start, I gave them the benefit of the doubt, really, because I mean, I think that's just an important thing to do. You don't want to just jump on stuff before like all the evidence is out. But from what I'm seeing now, it's just kind of really sad to see because it seems like, and I mean, the weird thing is like most of us have gone through this kind of shit before, right? I still remember like funding like a leverage account, and then losing money on it and then redepositing and that kind of stuff like you do in your early trading careers, right? That's the kind of stuff that you do when you don't know what you're doing. And then you learn and you stick around for a while and you stop doing that shit because you know that it can be the end of you, right? Everyone in any kind of market that trades leverage needs to understand that, right? Like if you put yourself at existential risk, um, there's a good chance that it's just going to blow up, right? And the more often you do it, the chance basically approaches 100% because it's just basic maths, and I mean they're supposed to be pretty good at that, right? They should have known what the fuck they were doing, and it looks like basically they fucked up, and then they were like, okay, um, maybe we can save it, and what they basically did was they risked crypto, right? They were like, okay,
Yeah.
we can get money from everywhere, not thinking about, or maybe they did, I don't know, but not thinking about the repercussions for the entire system. Because I mean, they've always been saying that they're like very big um, proponents and like very big, just like blockchain fans, as simple as it is to say, right? And what they did was throw back the space like at least a year just by themselves. Like having this kind of shit happen and just blowing everything up is just completely crazy. The one good thing that I see in all of this is that like we're gonna learn from it. I guess I don't think like companies are gonna do the same thing again. I don't think like not in that magnitude. So at
That's
least like
bearish, right? To some extent. Because, like, it's leverage and credit and the ability to make big bets and throw big money at stuff that makes number go up bigly and a
yes,
lot, right?
but
It's
yeah,
like Sam's defense of leverage. Like, his argument was essentially that people love to blame leverage for the bad stuff, but they always also forget that it contributes to the good stuff, right? Where
yeah,
there's like an outsized um, appetite for speculation. Leverage is the mechanism, and credit is the mechanism by which that appetite is sated, and that means number go up. Right. So
yeah.
if there's in the future, if you've got like low leverage, much tighter access to credit, so on and so forth, that might mean we miss out on some of the insane up only price action and market structure that we're used to in really hot bull markets. Maybe it makes
Yeah.
it more sustainable, but I think there's a kind of maybe a volatility price to pay for that. Don't know what you think.
100%. 100%. I think like the volatility price, that is just how it is. I think it's more healthy for the market when you don't have this kind of relationship where just like people are willing to just give enough money to like one firm that it can take the entire space down by like 50% or almost. I mean, basically like it went from 30 to like almost 15K. So, I mean, it's like Bitcoin did and altcoins did like much worse in a lot of these kind of moves. So I think like that's good because imagine if the market cap was 10 times bigger, right? The outcry would be much, much worse and like the repercussions would be worse. So I'm good that like I feel it's somewhat good that we're over that now and it's not going to happen again. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like, I mean, Voyager just disappeared basically, right? And all of these firms, like they've been around for a while. Now they're gone. And I don't think like new firms that get into the space or new companies or whatever are gonna do just like take the same risk because at the end of the day, I don't think any of the companies that work with free AC is particularly enjoying the situation right now. So at least that's
Yeah.
gone. Everything else, obviously, like it's terrible that it happened. I fucking hate it. I think it's the reason why we overshot to the downside so much. I think it's also like a really good capitulation thing for me as a trader to take advantage of. I think prices are lower than they should be. And I think if people come back in to buy it up, like whatever they de-risked, and like I think like how I see these things, right? When stuff blows up, you basically get paid by the person that blew up, if you just time it right, because you get like massively discounted prices. It's been the same thing at like various different time points in crypto history, where someone gets blown up and you get like prices that are way too high, and everyone knows, okay, this is way too high, or prices way too low, and then you can just kind of take their money by buying. And that's kind of how I felt. That's how I feel. That's why I've been buying, because I'm basically taking the money away from free AC or from like everyone that's been dealing with them because they pushed prices lower than they should have been.
Yeah, it's like by definition, they need liquidity, right?
Yeah.
And if they are distressed in doing so, they will accept a bad price for their urgency. And you are the one supplying that price, and that's good for you and bad for them. It's kind of how, I guess,
Yeah.
well, at least the liquidation side of things works. Not to harp on Celsius for too much, but did you see that thread by 0x1b, that famous
Yeah.
wallet?
Fucking insane.
And yeah, it turns out, I mean, that's a whole story. Probably, I mean, our audience probably read it, but TLDR, there's a prominent like 0x1b Twitter account and wallet address that was doing like a ton of prop trading and buying NFTs and expressing market views and whatever else. And now it turns out that that was basically a firm that had been bought out by Celsius, run by one of the firm's then executives, who was doing a lot of the yield farming for Celsius. And the agreement was basically that they'd do the DeFi yield farming stuff for them. And then Celsius had their own, I guess, internal team to hedge out the deltas and the impermanent loss associated with those yield farming activities. But they didn't. Which is insane,
Typical,
right? Like
but
absolutely
insane. Yeah.
insane. But also, there's like, why would you? Like, the market's going up only, and the tokens you're getting from farming going up only, and there's no impermanent loss, and everything is just like 10xing, and your users are 10xing and all depositing more money and more collateral, and the value of the collateral they're depositing is also going up. It's like you're not going to fucking think about these things until it's too late, right? Like, let the good times roll. But I think this lawsuit that was filed against Celsius, because the bloke reckons he owns his own money, which I believe, at least at face value. One of the things it says is that it was like Celsius alleges that Celsius operated outrightly as a Ponzi scheme, like not sort of crypto Ponzi scheme where the tokenomics are bad and it's going to go down a lot and there are insiders and unlocks. No, like an actual Ponzi scheme where new depositors are paid, like old depositors are paid with the money of new depositors type of thing, right? To the tune of billions or whatever else. It's just insane. I don't know what CFI, like CFI and CDFI are going to look like in the future, but if there's ever going to be a type of catalyst that either pushes people more towards kind of DeFi vaults or creates conditions of much higher transparency, it's got to be this, right? It's got to be this. So we'll see if we learn a single thing. You and I know that historically we don't learn shit, and it's just new degens come to replace the old ones and gamble again, and you kind of run it back.
I mean, it sounds more and more sophisticated every time. That's
yes.
Make it
the
more...
psychology doesn't change, right? But like the mechanisms just simply become more obtuse.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, oh shit, this actually like is so complicated. I don't understand it, but it sounds like it makes sense, and that gets better every single cycle. So, I mean, that's at least something, I guess. The Ponzi sounds better every single cycle.
Yes, the future of France. There's some macro stuff. I mean, not really. We've got some Fed meeting coming up, and it's the whole 50 basis points to 75. I think the market seems decently primed for 75,
Hmm.
but we've had hikes decisions before that were kind of quote unquote priced in, but the market still reacted terribly. That would be quite interesting to observe from a Bitcoin price action point of view, because this thing has been so sensitive on the way down to any news whatsoever. And like, we've had some more Celsius, Voyager, whatever news. That got decently absorbed so far. Maybe I'll eat my words as at the top of the range. But like, at least it's a better reaction than we would have had 3 or 4 weeks ago, right? And then with Fed stuff coming up as well, I think this one is less macro and more Federal Reserve's Brainard urges crypto regulation before industry becomes more entangled with the financial system. So classic kind of this is going to be a systemic risk, so let's regulate it. But there are
Hmm.
obviously macro stuff on the horizon coming up as well. More Fed meetings and earnings season as well. So I don't think we're getting away from our calendars anytime soon. Not particularly interesting news. This one's funny. Uprise lost 99% of client funds while shorting Luna during its price crash.
Yeah,
My
you gotta
favorite is
be.
the Korean firm billed itself as using artificial intelligence enabled automatic trading strategies to trade crypto on behalf of its clients. I mean, obviously, any and all intelligence in this firm was completely artificial. I agree with that
Yep.
much. I don't know about you. Whenever I hear AI in trading, there's no
Yeah, it's a
bigger red
scam.
flag. It's
It's a
such a
scam.
scam. Like
Every
most of
time
the
it's a
time you read
scam.
automated, it's a scam, right?
Yeah.
Especially with like retail bots or just like some random advert on SEO advert on Google being like algorithmic automated crypto trading. Don't worry, give us your money. Rubbish. But I think AI just takes it to the next level in terms of how scammy and incredible it is. This is actually quite impressive in its own right,
Yeah, I
because
mean,
this thing went to zero. They went down 99% like 3 days, 4 days in a row, and you got
4 days
liquidated
in a row.
shorting it.
Yeah.
Can you try to steelman this and explain how it maybe possibly could have happened in a way that doesn't make them look like some of the most impressive idiots on the planet?
I
Like, how
mean,
would this actually look slash work?
the funny thing is like it was pretty much up like down only. Besides like a few like I mean you had a few bounces here and there that went like quite a bit, right? So you had like one bounce that was like 700% and one bounce that was 150%. And you basically, and I mean you would have to really, really try hard to make this happen, but you would have to basically wait for this thing to completely and fully kind of capitulate, and you would have to short this with leverage probably above 10x, while it's like just completely blowing up right before like it bounces like a little bit. But the thing is, like, you'd have to be really fucking stupid to do like this, because the thing is, like, when you have like that kind of size, right, you're pushing the market down by yourself, and this market wants to go to zero, right? So you would have to kind of be like really, really stupid executing this to kind of make this happen, in my opinion, because yeah, you start selling, price runs away from you, and you would have to move your cells down, down, and down and increase the size, which is fucking stupid, right? Like what you do is like you sell, price goes down, and you basically make it capitulate, right? And that's fine, shit happens. And then it bounces and you start selling again, and you keep doing that over and over again. It's like, it's not that complicated when you have that kind of size. Especially when you know something is going to zero, right? Which I mean, a lot of people did with Luna. So I think what they basically did is just they ran it down, realized they were not getting filled, and then just slammed it. Basically pushing price down by like whatever, like 50, 60, 70% basically by themselves, and got filled bigly at like the low points, and were like suddenly like on like pretty high leverage and just got completely liquidated that way. But I mean, it's like you'd have to be like, I don't know, I can barely put it in words how stupid you would have to be to get
It has
liquidated
to be like an
on
insane
this.
comedy of high leverage errors, right?
Yeah, but like with this kind of size, you can't even go like that high leverage, right? Like it's
Yes.
like
I mean,
it's
relative to what you've got, right?
yeah, it's just completely insane. Like you'd have to be the worst trader alive
I mean,
Like if
clearly. Well, but it's not traders, it's AI. Just blame the machines. They clearly went rogue, right?
yeah, I mean, I can understand if someone like if a random degen like gets liquidated on this, shorting it on 50x leverage, right? Because I mean, this thing moved a lot, right? So if you kind of mistime it, you get liquidated on 50x. You're an idiot because you gambled, but I mean, whatever. But if you're trading that kind of size, and you're supposed to know what the fuck you're doing, if you get liquidated on this kind of move, you're just like, I mean,
It just
Jesus
sounds like
Christ.
something broke, right? It's like that
Yeah.
price action is so insane and so abnormal. It really sounds like something broke. The insane part is, it says in the article, the loss represents 99% of the funds custodied by clients on the platform. And as far as who those clients are, it says managing on behalf of its customers. These clients are high net worth individuals, not anymore, and corporate entities, according to the report. So it's like, can you imagine getting that? It's like, to our dear ultra rich people, good news, we shorted Luna. They're like, oh my God, this AI shit is amazing. Bad news, you have no money left. It's like, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, absolutely mental.
Insane, insane.
Yeah, that's like some of the funniest shit I've ever heard. Not gonna lie. Like you see something that legitimately just goes down 99%, goes down 99% again, and it goes down 99% again, and you tell people that you got liquidated shorting it. It's like you couldn't
It's
make this
so
shit up.
crypto. Bro, the headline flow, we're going to look back on the headline flow over the last 2 months, and it's just going to look absolutely surreal in hindsight. Like, it's already
Yeah,
surreal, like, sitting here, you know, that much is obvious, but like looking back on this or trying to explain this to a new entrant in like 2023, 2024, etc., as I'm sure we'll be doing on good old Casual Friday,
yep,
it's going to be nuts. No one's going to believe us. I'm glad we've got these digital receipts in the form of Casual Friday. Compass Mining cuts staff by 15%, reduces salaries for senior employees. I also read a thread earlier about how just a lot of miners are under pressure because price is low and electricity costs are high and
yes,
commodities are rallying, etc. And historically, miners capitulating and miners selling have been, first of all, has been a feature of the market cycle. And
yes,
there's also been a pretty decent bottom signal when those businesses get that distressed and are forced to be very sloppy with inventory management. I guess that if you wanted to craft a counter argument, it would be that mining now is much more sophisticated and they've got like better risk management and more experience, yada yada. But clearly, none of those arguments apply to crypto firms, right? So
yes.
don't
I was just
exactly.
about to
I
say
don't see why
that.
it would. Yeah, I don't see how you could assume it carries over. Do you think this is like, is this catalyst on your radar? Like, do you think miners will end up, because we haven't seen it yet? We've seen some de-risking from like a Bitcoin held on balance sheet point of view, whatever else. But like when most people think of like 2018 style miners selling aggressively, unwinding inventory, capitulation type of thing, we haven't seen that. Do you think it's going to happen this cycle? Like, is this like a thing on your radar? Is it like a, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a little bit of it. I've seen like a bunch of like miners actually sell, um, but not as, yeah, like you said, not as pronounced as it has happened in the past. It's been like a bottom indicator every single time it's happened, basically. But I don't like it's not bullish to me that they're selling, but it's not really bearish either. I just think like it's just something that happens during a certain point in the cycle. It's not really short term anything. It's just, I mean, they're selling. That's obviously not good for price, but price is low, so other people are buying. It's just like I think it's I don't really care too much, to be honest. Like um, prices being where they are right now is much more important than this kind of like this narrative that miner selling is either gonna like make price capitulate down or is gonna make price go up because it's been like that every single time. I think it's not really too helpful. Um, yeah, for me, it's like not that important. I don't really watch it too much.
Yeah.
It's more of like an interest kind of thing. Like I look
Yeah.
into it,
Or like if you
and
see them nuking it turbo into like a high time frame area, that might be
yeah,
a
then you want
decent
to be buying. Like you
contextual
want to,
signal.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
because
want to
their
fade
timing
it.
by definition isn't great, right? Like they
Yeah,
hold on to too much inventory as number go up and then get rid of too much as number goes down in general.
as long as you're a believer, yeah, totally agree.
Yes. So I
Like
guess
because
that gone.
you could make a really good argument that is pretty bearish when even the miners are selling, right? Because like holy shit, it has to be really bad. But then again, like if you're a believer, it's like okay, these are like the last people that you need to get out before you can actually go up again. So it depends, right? Like if you're not a believer, you're like, haha, even the miners are selling. This shit is just completely trash. And if your believer is like how the miners are selling, I can buy that stuff up cheap, and those are the last ones that have coins anyway. So I can just like buy this from them, and other people, other high net worth individuals are gonna buy with me, and we're gonna make the bottom. So it's like I think you can spin that narrative as you want. An interesting narrative is like the Mt. Gox thing as well, which is starting to come up again, where you have a bunch of, supposedly anyway, a bunch of unlocks. I think it's like in the realm of like 150,000 Bitcoin that's supposed to be getting unlocked. But yeah, I don't have the news article here.
Yeah, I don't have the article either, but the TLDR for audience is essentially when Mt. Gox went insolvent, there was a very long recovery and insolvency process and whatever else. And the timeline on this thing, Don, you remember, it's been insanely delayed, right?
Yes.
And every single date where some funds, like recovered funds, would be returned to users. The adherence to the court's timeline has been like close to zero. So this has been like some sort of specter of communism haunting crypto over the last however many years. And the basic, I guess, price assessment of that would be that, look, a lot of coins got stolen when coins were very cheap. Some coins have been recovered, and there's a process by which they are returned to their users. When Mt. Gox happened, coins, compared to where they are now, weren't very expensive at all. Even as much as the market's gone down now, those people who get their coins back are going to be up a lot, like a lot, a
Yeah.
lot. And therefore, if and when they get their BTC back, they're going to sell it to convert it into fiat. And that's like a lot of supply potentially hitting the market at the same time. I don't honestly have strong views on this. I think like if the market's going to be strong, it'll do a decent job of pricing in and or absorbing this type of thing. If it isn't, then it's going to find a reason to roll over, either that or another one. And on the new specific thing itself, the court, like the timeline for all this type of stuff and when the unlocks are coming, it's been wrong for literally years.
Yeah.
So I think hyper fixating on specific timelines and trying to align it with market stuff probably isn't the best idea.
I mean, people use this like Mt. Gox thing to sell. I think it was like 2000, even like 2017, early 2017, we had the news that we'd finally get it unlocked, and then you had it in during the bear market a couple times during 2018, and you had it a couple times during 2019 and 20. And I mean, like if you didn't buy because of it for the last for the last like 4 or 5 years,
Can you
you're probably
imagine?
not
Yeah.
happy. So I think it's like that kind of thing, like you said, is probably best just ignored. If it's gonna hit you eventually, like I mean, you can kind of tell when it's actually getting serious, but the headlines I would like mostly ignore until it actually like gets closer, and then you obviously just want to watch how yeah, how well the market reacts, because that's actually a really interesting one, because you could argue that the news, like if they finally get unlocked, that's actually just going to be like negative news out the way, right? Like you get like an unlock, whatever, half of those people or like half of those bitcoins might get sold, but it's like it's not like in a no, like it's quite a big amount, but it's not insurmountable. And then you have like one piece of constant FUD basically gone, which could actually be bullish
Just
price
rip the
wise.
band-aid off, right?
Yeah.
And see how the market absorbs the supply. There'll probably be some signal there. It comes
Yeah.
back to the classic thing, like how the market reacts to news as opposed to the news itself. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's not always true, especially when you get like outsized supply or demand shocks from the news. But in general, it's a good way to look at things. I've got a terrible joke to make. Should I make it?
Yeah, of course, always.
Okay, I mean, if it's really bad, we can just crop it out because we know how to use the editing function now. But minor capitulation, two definitions. One is when Bitcoin miners sell a lot of inventory rather urgently to cover business costs and as a result of poor market cycle timing. Minor capitulation when a 15-year-old finally replies to Calvinaire's 16th DM.
Oh god, oh that's so bad. Oh, but the worst part about it is like that I think 95% will not get it. I'd be very surprised.
Do we
if,
keep
like,
it? Do we keep that in?
we can keep it in. I don't think anyone gets it.
Okay. Allegedly, I you know
Well,
I know
in
10
Minecraft,
people. I know
yeah.
10 people called Calvinaire. They're living in different parts of the world, and the joke's about them, not any specific Calvinaire, obviously.
Obviously.
Not related to crypto, to be clear. Anyway, God, what a disaster. Final bit of news. Bitcoin bear cross raises outlook for bull revival. I actually really like this article because it does some thinking. You don't get that a lot from CoinDesk. No, I'm joking. Sort of. So it's basically the fact that the 100 and 200, I think it's the whatever higher time frame moving averages, have formed a bear cross. And so usually the kind of base level of analysis has been that if you look at it at face value, a bearish cross is bearish because it means that there's a bearish trend, right? And a bullish cross is bullish because it means there's a bullish trend. And that's fine at face value. The issue is it starts to become less true as you go to like very higher time frame trend following proxies, just because they're so slow to react to price, right? And how long it takes to move those things around. So by the time you actually generate a bearish cross, the market has had to move so low to trigger that it actually acts as an oversold signal. Or if you get like a super higher time frame bullish cross, by the time that signal's been generated, price has moved so far that it's like a mean reversion signal. That's probably the best way to think about it, right? Like if price has been displaced so much to cross over these really slow moving averages, that's some evidence, or at least another penny in the piggy bank to add to team mean reversion, because even if the follow-on trend does end up aligning with the original direction of the cross, in itself, the fact that it happened usually means that there's been some pretty meaty displacements in the market. What do you think? I mean, it's like the 5200 whole golden cross meme as well, right?
Yes.
It basically just acts like an overbought and oversold signal. What do you think of this? Do you give a shit? Have I missed anything with the logic of how to look at these things?
Yeah, I mean, how I always looked at it, right? Back when I was still like using it more as kind of confidence, and I always used like indicators. The only thing I've really used them for, and I don't really use them that much anymore. But even back in the day, I used them for confidence, right? And how I looked at it back in the day on the higher time frames was that oftentimes price would just kind of return to the point of where they start crossing over, right? I mean, that's like even has like a special name to it. I don't really quite remember how it's called when you kind of retest like a bullish or bearish cross, but I mean, there's like a whole thing. It's not really my style of trading, but that's kind of like the mean reversion that you get, right? So you have like this crossover and you look kind of, okay, where is the crossover? And that's like just like a bunch of moving averages as resistance. And oftentimes you actually come back into that area to retest it, right? And then you decide, okay, if it's bullish or bearish. In crypto, or like especially in Bitcoin's case, most of the time when like these kind of moves happen, so when you have like a bearish trend confirmed, the bearish trend is usually close to being over just by virtue of it being down so much, and in general being an up only market, longer time frame. So it's like an up only market, long time frame. And then if the long time frames start flipping, it's usually like a good sign that you're close to the bottom. Or I mean, if you're like in the bear camp, it's good sign for it to go to zero, I guess. But yeah, so for me, it's like it doesn't really matter. Like I don't look at it, but you could use it as like an area of confluence where you could target on a bounce that kind of crossover area, because that's usually where you find resistance by like just in general people looking at it and selling
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's just like anything, right? As soon as the market realizes everyone agrees on what the trend is close to being over. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, we've been chopping for so long. It's like, that's when volatility is going to pick up, right? Or like, oh, crypto isn't like a generational super cycle stock to flow uptrend. Yeah, let's not. I think that's all I've got. Anything you want to add on, touch on? Listen, I tried being the operative verb. Some of your live stream from Wednesday, just to kind of see what's up. I got
Oh
10,
God.
10 minutes in, and there's zero market commentary, and it's all about dating. Like, what are you doing to our channel, and why are you responsible for all of its success? Because it's the only thing people seem to give a shit about. And look,
Yeah, it's
my value proposition on this channel, let's be clear, it's already very, very stretched, right? I take one trade every 10 years.
Fuck off.
My videos are shorter than yours. I don't have the patience for Q&A live streams, etc. So I'm hanging on here by a thread, right? And now that you're turning into like a lifestyle dating, buying the bottom thing, I have neither of those things. Okay, neither. You've got to throw me a lifeline out here somewhere, or at least I don't know what's happening. I feel like I'm slowly being edged out of Technical Roundup because there's no bottom entry, no girlfriend. It's all over. Like there's a real identity crisis going on.
Yeah, I mean the dating stuff is gonna stop just based on the fact that it's getting more and more serious. So I don't want to talk about anything serious. I think.
Just bring her on the show. It'll be great.
Yeah, no. For the only reason is just basically because like there's gonna be 10,000 people that are gonna be really cool that watch it and enjoy it, and there's gonna be uh, like like always like 5 or 10 widows that you have to deal with. So
And I'm three
like,
of them.
so yeah, the dating stuff is gonna go away. I'm sad to say. Because I mean it's like not a date anymore. It's getting
Oh,
more serious.
oof.
So I can kind of give like a clear on that front. So you're not gonna have to deal with that shit anymore.
Okay, I can stay. I can stay on the channel.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean
look,
next is you. You're gonna have to do it. That
no,
was
no,
like
no.
that that that's what I went through. So you're gonna have to do it as well because clearly the people are only here for that kind of
I'm
stuff.
just gonna start making stuff up, and it'll still be far more believable than whatever real things happen in my personal life. But look, I've faced doxed or whatever and done all that type of stuff. Ever since the pandemic, I've been sporting a kind of Serbian contract killer type of look. Right? It's like mostly shaved head, shaved face, glasses, in good shape, etc. And everyone hates it. Like especially my family, they absolutely loathe it. And so now that in the spirit of crypto mean reversion, I'm gonna mean revert as well. And I've been growing out my hair and beard completely untouched, uninterrupted. I look like Ulysses in the early part of the Odyssey right now. Unkempt, matted beard, whatever type of thing. And so if this goes well, the target one is some sort of, I guess, stereotype London, Middle Eastern Habibi type of fucking look, with the beard and hair, and that is going to fix all my problems, right?
I mean,
The fact
I've
that I've
seen
got zero
pictures. It looks
personal
good.
life at the moment is only as a product of my lack of hair and beard, and nothing to do with my social skills, personality, commitment issues, none of that. Those things weren't relevant. It's only a question of hair, and I'm fixing it, so maybe I'll be able to plug the gap after
I
all,
mean,
literally
I've
and
seen.
metaphorically.
Oh wow, oh, that's it's not bad, not bad. No, I've seen pictures. I think it looks great. So,
Okay.
I mean,
You'll
easy.
know it's the top when we agree to do a face cam stream,
Oh
right?
yeah,
We should do it for weekly open at some point. Me, you, Ledger, hit it up. You
yeah,
can wear
but
a duck costume or whatever. It doesn't
no, I
matter.
mean, I don't mind doing it. It's just gonna be like, yeah, I mean, we can do that like when we meet up. I think if we meet up at some point, I'm down to do
How are
it.
you going to threaten me with that and hold it over my head? That's so unfair.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way that I'm gonna get to see you anyway.
So you are using leverage. Just the leverage is on me to meet up with you as opposed to for your
Well,
market
I mean,
positions.
obviously, you gotta get your wishes true somehow. That's the secret, my friend.
Strong arming me, right? Think that's plenty. Anything
Yep.
else you want to add? Or are we good to go?
No, I think we're good to go.
Awesome. Hope this is helpful to our audience. Leave us a comment if you enjoyed the last bit more than all of our market commentary. I'd be very sad, but I would appreciate that type of insight so we know what to do with this channel. Thank you to FTX for supporting the show. Best mobile trading app, portfolio tracking app on the market. Go get it. Buy altcoins for your family, and then just press hide portfolio if Donald got you to FOMO into the top, arguing for mean reversion, whatever that means. He's not a quant. Why would you listen to him? Anyway, that's all from us. Have an excellent weekend. See you on Monday. Take care and goodbye.
Bye bye.